Hello, this is Kris Nelson from evolvedconsciousness.org. Today I'll be reading the etymological breakdown article of Tracing Reality, the Visionary Quest to Wisdom. This was published on the 7th of December 2014. So I was going to present this one yesterday, but then I did an hour 40-minute introduction. So this time I'll actually be doing the article. Matter is what individual objects are made of in general, and these objects are represented in nature, the universe. And I have the matter refers to a link to the article on matter I did and how it relates to nature, and etymologically and how they're the same in generation. So you can take a look at that for more information. Nature is the reality we live in, that we are immersed in, the great womb we are born into and live in. So again, this is metaphorical, right? Mother Nature. It's not an actual mother. It doesn't actually care. It doesn't have feelings. You need to be an actual physical body with consciousness expressions and free will in order to have care. And animals have that. And the highest animal that has the most capacity to care, or the most capacity to have the least care and the most apathy, is humans, because we can create the most good and the most evil compared to animals that are amoral and more in the center of the general genus of animal. We're an animal, but we can go off of way on the deep end of either polarity, on the evil or on the good. The deep end of good is what we're supposed to do, but we're really on the deep end of evil right now. And we can still go further, which is where we're headed. There are hidden, occulted, darkened aspects of reality that we can't see and don't want to see. We can rebirth ourselves through the womb of black hole, rabbit hole, universe of hidden in the dark, occulted knowledge to uncover our masked potential and infinite value. So what I'm saying is the womb, you know how it's dark in the womb. That's why there's this association with the feminine as being dark. But there's multiple aspects of nature, of the universe and reality that have both dual aspects of masculine and feminine. So you think of hidden, occulted, darkened. That's why I make reference to the womb and rebirth, because that's about alchemy and coming out of the masculine earth, which is darkened and dead. Because see, the womb isn't dead, it's alive. See, that's why there's dual aspects to everything. The earth element is a masculine. It's dark, dead, cold, and blind because it doesn't have the light, the heat, and the vision. So that's the masculine aspect. Then you come out of that and then you reach towards the sky, the air, the female element. No, it's not a masculine element. This is why everyone has things wrong, because they're not looking at nature and how things reflect. I will explain this in my natural law big presentation that's in the works, and how we can actually look at reality and nature and the science and phenomenon in nature in order to understand things more accurately, which we're not doing. So when you come out of the tomb and to be rebirthed, well, you do go through, you can look at it in the feminine aspect rather than the masculine, dead in the earth, no life. Well, you look at it from the feminine in the womb, you rebirth. And so I'm talking about the black hole, the rabbit hole, you know, the occult, hidden, darkened information we get into. It's a black hole, it's a rabbit hole of information. So the universe of hidden in the dark, occulted knowledge to uncover our masked potential and infinite value. Knowledge and memory of knowledge from learning, passed down in history, is what allows us to build successively from the foundations of others and keep going on without having to, quote, reinvent the wheel too much. So I've done in a previous etymological article on knowledge and memory. You can look back at that, and I've talked about our potential and value in the natural law boundary condition, the spectrum of living, and culminated in the Philosopher's Stone, that 3-part project I did back in September. So Tracing Reality, the Visionary Quest to Wisdom, does not detail a visionary quest as most people conceive it, but is a wordplay from the etymological contents of this article, as you will see. Tracing reality is the visionary quest of wisdom, because you have to trace reality, you have to get grounded in reality, You have to see how things trace back to reality, which is what all symbols and words are supposed to do. And you see how they accurately reflect reality. And then you can trace reality through the words, and you can understand reality correctly. So we have to go back and be grounded in reality and the things that exist in order to conceive of things that we can't see readily, that are not visible to our eyes. We can pierce through the material physicality and pierce the veil of the physical and look into the metaphysical, what's behind it. I'm not talking about fanciful notions and all the higher planes of existence and all this alleged information and transcendence and ascendance and all this hogwash la la land stuff and 5D and all this crap. I'm talking about really getting grounded in reality and discovering what we can understand from reality. That's the visionary quest of wisdom, because you're using your vision, your actual eyes, to see. The eyes of your senses in order to see with the eyes of the mind. With the one eye, if you want to look at it that way. But we have an internal vision that is more powerful and more piercing than our external vision, but it all starts with our external vision. So we trace reality, and that's the visionary quest of wisdom. Because it is a quest. You have to be on a knowledge quest. You have to be on the spiritual quest and journey on the spiritual path and way towards greater attainment of truth and morality. Understanding more truth and understanding more deeper aspects of morality. How do you do that? You trace reality. And that brings you to the vision of your mind and the quest towards wisdom. The wisdom of right action in the world. So we begin with nature, from natus to born, from nasi to be born, and then gene to birth beget. And if you want to see related work I've done, you can look at kind, kin, genus, and care. And this one will be related to animal consciousness and our consciousness, and more specifically human consciousness. Another work I've done relates to our consciousness and our knowledge, and how animals have knowledge too, and they have memory, and we're all part of the same kind, the same kin, the same genus. We're not part of the same species, but we're part of the same genus. So nasi and gnasi, with a G, is derived from the Latin word nascer, from the Proto-Indo-European root gene again. And then we have nascer to nasi to nascor to nascor with a G, and then gen. And when we look at genus, it goes back to gen as well. Birth, beget, produce. And we have nascent, arising, young, immature, from nasi to be born, nasi genus. So we have nature, nasi, nascer, nasi with a G, genus, and it's related to birth and born. So you can see when I put nascent, you can see that resembles nescient, which I'll be getting into, because immature. When you're nescient, you're immature. You don't have the capacity to learn, because you're not able to yet. You haven't developed. You're just born. You don't even know how to think yet. So we also have a similar looking nocer, gnosis, a cognate, cognition, psi for science, seer, science, knowledge. Those are all the roots. You can get to conscience, conscience, consciousness, conscious, conscious. It's all related to the same thing. There's nocer, gnosis, cognate, cognition, psi, seer, conscience, conscious, consciousness, all relate to knowing or knowledge. And then we have above, or nocer, gnosis, where we're talking about nasi, nascer. So you're going to see how it's all related. There's a link between nasi, born, and si, seer, know, right in the words. So you can see G-N-A-S-C-I, well, S-C-I, S-C-I-R-E, well, that's to know, related to science, conscience, consciousness. Another example, look at nescient and nascent. Both are very similar in appearance and meaning. Nescient is immaturity in metaphysics, which is knowledge. nascent is immaturity in physics, body. You understand? So we had nascent related to immature and to be born. And you have nescient, which I have right under here, is from ne, not, and then sir, to know, to not know. And why don't you know? Because you were just born. You're nascent, so you're nescient. You see how these words are really linked in how they develop and what they mean? Because ignorance is when you are able to know and the knowledge is there, you choose to ignore it. But when you're nescient, it's because you do not have the capacity. A newborn child, a 1-year-old child, a 2-year-old child does not have the capacity to learn about certain things. They have to progress in their development of an ego personality identity construct in order to distinguish themselves from other aspects of reality, in order to make sense of it in a relational capacity of the diversity, multiplicity, and variability, which is why there's, I've mentioned it in another audio, I think it's Ken Wilber who's mentioned like a pre-division and a division and a post-division aspect of recognizing ourselves in reality. So that the pre-one is where you're just born and you don't recognize things. It's all one. And then as your eyes develop and as you start to distinguish things, and first it's just an understanding of you and your mother, or it's just your mother, and then you start to differentiate other things and then other aspects of reality. So that's part of the division of being born, and we can correspond that in a metaphorical way with how we conceive of the universe in terms of an alleged conceptual prime mover, prime cause, unmovable mover, which we can refer to as pure energy, pure awareness, pure consciousness, God, singularity, and many, many different ways of metaphorically looking at it to try to understand things that are beyond our ability to grasp and understand. We can't see it, we can't look at it, it's not in reality. It might be the source, but we don't have a way of really getting to know it. We can only conceptualize and envision to understand it through concepts and metaphors and allegories and similes, and we often anthropomorphize, project, and personify, which is why all of the ancient history is about that. It's all about metaphors, the God in the Bible, all the gods in all the other civilizations in Egypt and everywhere. It's all personifications, anthropomorphization, and projection of aspects of ourselves and reality in reference terms to animal gods or physical gods or nature gods or elemental gods, etc. But it's all symbolic knowledge. So I'm getting off track again, sorry about that. But I was talking about nescient and nascent in terms of being born, and where you're just one, and then you recognize the variability, diversity, and multiplicity in reality, and then you're interconnecting and interrelating with that. And then the post part is supposed to be where you re-recognize the oneness again. Anyways, this is in the Ken Wilber conception. I'm just putting that out there in order to an analogy and a metaphor for the universe and ourselves and when we're born. So this is how we look at ourselves and see how things develop, and then we project it onto the external reality as a metaphor and analogy in order to help us to understand things better. So the next word is no, and I just want to mention that my headset microphone stopped working. I think it's because I took it in transportation to a family dinner yesterday. Now it doesn't work, so I took my old headset which had issues, and I did 14 minutes of audio, and then I don't know, that one I stopped using because it had problems. It would stop working, so it stopped working. And now I'm back to another broken microphone, not a headset, just a cheap mic, but at least it works. Nowadays I think things are really made to break and not last at all. All you do is take it in transportation, your wire gets bent a bit. It's this new way they make wires where the conductivity is in the circumference of the wire rather than as a real gauge wire, and the circumference, as you know, if you bend something that's straight and you bend it in a circle, well, it's going to create an angular breakage. So if you bend the wires too much, well, it breaks the contact, and then your product is garbage. So anyways, I just wanted to mention that. Hopefully this won't affect things too much. So we have know from psi, from see, knowledge, from seer to know. And we have gs from the Proto-Indo-European root, gno, for gnosis, to know. We have the Latin nocere, and that's from the Greek gno, as in gnosis. And that's as in gignoskine. And we have the Sanskrit jna, and that's to know as well. So gnosis in Greek is investigation, knowledge, inquiry. Cognition is conscience when we look at the etymology. They mean the same thing. Know together, know with, or with knowledge. So cognition is the science of thought in the mind, and you have affection, which is the science of emotion, feelings. So co-nocere, cognition, com, nocere, with, together, knowledge, to know together, to know with, and you have conscience, which is to know with, to know together. One is nocere, to know, and one is seer, to know, but they all have the same root, com. So cognition and conscience, even though they look different, they mean the same thing in etymology. If you have co-nocere, which is com as well, com nocere, they don't put the M, so cognition, you don't have the M or the N, but it still has the root com, as in with and together. So co-nocere is to come to know, get acquainted with, from the Proto-Indo-European root gno and then sko, nosko, a suffix form of gno. So we have cognition, conscience, and co-nocere, which is the breakdown of cognition. Cognition is com, nocere, and co-nocere, same thing. Then we have the word cognate. So when you look into etymology and you have cognates, they're words that mean the same thing, so they have the same knowledge, but they might be spelt differently. They might have the same roots, but changed, or the G might be a K, or it might be something completely different. And you have in Sanskrit JNA instead of GNO, or GNO, GNA, or GNO, as in nasi and born, and to know. So you have JNA, to know in Sanskrit. And so cognate is from cognatus, of common descent, from com, together, and natus from nasi, old form of nasi, to be born. So a cognate, when we're looking at words, related words, they have a common descent. That's what the word means. How are they common descent? Well, it's cognate and not cognition, cognoscere. It's cognate. Instead of an O, it's an A. So we can see, even from the Sanskrit and the A, JNA, GNO, same thing. But here you have GNA, as I've been showing with to be born, genus, nasi, nature. You have it's a common descent when you're looking at cognates instead of a cognoscere. It's a cognasi, to be born. It's related by blood. That's why it's a common descent. So when you have cognates in etymology, it's words of a common descent. They're related by blood, in quotes, because they're born of the same thing. They're born of the same root. So that's a cognate. So you can already see how I'm already starting to link gnosis, knowledge, and to be born, nasi. You have si, nocere, and you have nasi, born, and gnosis. They're almost the same words, it's just they have different meaning. But knowledge and born relate. As you could think of, in order for something to exist as something in the universe to be known through knowledge, it has to be born into the universe first, metaphorically. So cognate, related words indicate a common descent. Cognate, cognition, with knowledge, know together. Cognates are knowing words together. They are cognates with each other. They know each other. So cognition, your mind. What are you doing? You're knowing reality with yourself. You're relating it to yourself and you're coming to know reality. You're learning about it. Gnosis, science, to know. Cognate is co, and then G-N-A-T-E is not the normal G-N-O for knowledge. It's G-N-A. Now this word form relates knowledge as we relate through birth. Here we see the link between know and born again. As I was saying, when I made my introduction above about matter in the womb and everything, you can see how being born in the womb and being born into the universe and rebirth ourselves into knowledge, we can engage in the alchemical process through a conscious awareness of reality in ourselves in order to remake ourselves, and or into everything in reality we live in there is coming from we come from the great womb we're born into, Mother Nature. It's all metaphors and allegories in order to make sense of things and relate things together. It's not a literal womb, it's not a literal mother. It's just personifications and projection and anthropomorphizing in order to relate things to ourselves, because that's how we make sense of things. We relate them to ourselves. So the root gen is used to create nasi, born, with the form GNA plus SCI. So you can already see nasi has GNA, which was to be born, and then it has the end part C, which is to know, to be born and to know. And that's right in the word nasi. So in the word nasi, which was about, where is it? With a G, I'm talking about, not just with an N. The word nasi just with an N comes from the old Latin nasi with a G. And when you look at nasi with a G, well, that's na and si, and it's born and know, born and knowledge. So you can see already in the words in etymology, being born and knowing are intimately related. So then GNO is also from the same root formation, as being both to bear, produce, generate, or to ken, know, recognize. Because ken, again, G and K are interchangeable. So gen, genu, GNE, GNO, as being both to bear, produce, and generate, or to ken, know, and recognize. And you can find this in the etymology. So we come to know through recognition of reality, existence, universe, nature, the mother of matter. Metaphorically, the mother of matter, nature. Because nature, if you click on the word matter at the beginning of the article, it'll bring you to that first etymological breakdown article I did, developing a story narrative to explain ourselves and reality in relation to ourselves, which is the whole point of language and communication, and how words develop, and how symbols develop through metaphor and analogy. So we come to know through recognition of reality, existence, nature, the mother of matter. The things that are born into it, we have to know those things in order to know about them and to know ourselves and to come to greater conscious awareness of reality and thereby evolve consciousness. And that's the point of the article. Tracing reality, the visionary quest to wisdom. Because with this knowledge of reality, then eventually you'll be able to gain the understanding in order to bring you to the wisdom of right action. So tracing reality. Now we're going to learn about tracing reality. So what's that about, tracing reality? Well, we need to learn about reality, right? We're going to trace the things in reality. We're going to track them down. So learning is from the Proto-Indo-European L-E-I-S, lice. You have to track or furrow. So let's look at track. That's a footprint, a mark left by anything. So you have the default track, and it's also a trace, which is why I use tracing reality. This is all about learning about reality. That's what I'm talking about, the importance of getting back down to the grounded reality and learning from there, and then building up our knowledge from there, which is how everything started. First there was reality, then there was knowledge of reality, and then there was communication about that knowledge through symbols and words and language. So track, footprint, mark, left behind, trace. And if you remember, if you look at my previous audio article on characters and our character, well, that's what a character is. It's a mark. And we mark our own character, the malleability of the clay that we are. Metaphorically, we're made from God as clay from the earth, and the breath of life is breathed in through our mouth or our nostrils, and then there's the human. So we're clay, we're malleable, we can reform ourselves, we can rebirth ourselves. That's part of alchemy and the higher order consciousness living, and most people are not doing this. So the things, a mark left behind, a footprint, well, everything that's born into creation, everything that exists, any extant object in creation, you can say it's born and it's a mark. And you can track it. It leaves a trace because it exists. And then there's the more literal tracking of animals, because animals leave tracks and marks. So trace, follow a course, draw a line, make an outline of something. From Latin tractus, a track or course, drawing out. And from the stem traher, pull or draw. So you're drawing out because you're following something. You're drawing out, you're pulling and drawing it towards you. You're using your vision to track something down, and you're going closer towards it. You're pulling it towards you. You're actually going towards it, but in a sense, it's coming closer to you, so you're drawing it out. You're tracking the course. Then we have a tract, period or lapse of time. And we have a track, course, a space, duration, a drawing out or pulling. From the Proto-Indo-European trag, to draw, drag, or move. And then we have, looking at drag, it's to draw, Proto-Germanic dragon, to draw and pull, from the Proto-Indo-European root drag, to draw, drag on the ground. So drag, tract, trace, track, again, it's things related to the ground. That's why we have to get grounded in reality. My previous 2 audios on grounding in reality and symbols, reality, knowledge, belief, and attachment all deal with how we're not thinking properly, we're not grounding ourselves in reality, and we're getting lost in speculative conceptions that don't have enough data points attached to reality in order to validate them as legitimate concepts in the probable or actual, and they're only possibilities of imagination from the inductive, intuitive capacities of our mind. It doesn't make them a truth, it just makes it a conception. So then I get to memory, which I've talked about in knowledge, memory, and reality. I think was the previous an article I've done quite a while back, maybe 10 articles back, I don't remember. There's an audio for it. So memory, recollection of someone or something. It's an awareness, consciousness. So you see, memory is directly related to awareness and consciousness. What's consciousness? Ness, I broke it down in axioms, existence, consciousness, and identity. It's a capacity or characteristic, I think. I'd have to go look back. But it's a faculty of conscience, awareness. It all has to do with knowledge. Conscious awareness of reality is what evolves consciousness. I've been saying this since I made my site. It all has to do with reality, things that exist. You're not going to evolve consciousness by immersing yourself in phantasmal, imaginal conceptions that you're not grounding in reality, which is the problem with all New Agers, all pseudo-spiritualists, and all religionists, and I'd say even 99% of people who call themselves spiritual do not even understand the validity of their concepts, and they're merely lost in the haze of a superstructure of belief, that belief after belief after belief of conceptions validating each other and corresponding, but they're not grounded in reality very well. And I talk about this in previous articles, previous audio on grounding in reality, which doesn't have an article, and the article and audio on what I just mentioned in reality, knowledge, belief, and symbols and attachment. So, just briefly, concepts are derived, which are metaphors, and then people forget that they're metaphors, they take them literally, and then these literal interpretations have further beliefs and conceptions and abstractions built upon them, but they were never built upon a foundation in reality through an understanding of the purpose of symbols and metaphor and analogy and allegory and parables. So they take them literal, or they take some parts and then they twist things, and then things get bastardized along a crooked path. Then you end up going in 180 degrees because each fork you take that diverges from that grounding in reality of things you can verify takes you along the fantasy path of believing whatever you want. And this is the free-floating beliefs that have no grounding in reality, because you're going further and further away from reality and not verifying things back down to the ground. You're not deducing things. You just keep inducing and inducing imaginal fantasies that you think exist, but probably don't, because it's just your mind. The mind is it's an imagination workshop. You can invent anything and believe it. So, memory, recollection, awareness, consciousness, from the French mémoire, which is mind, memory. So again, mind, awareness, consciousness, recollection. It's all related. We have a memorial, a record, so it's keeping a record of things. From memor, mindful, and from the Proto-Indo-European root, mer, to remember. And if you know mer in French, maybe in Latin, I guess, but in French, mer is mer, which is the sea. And then you think of sea, and you think of womb again, birth canal, and I'm not sure if it was in characters in our character, or another one on etymology. And it was the last 10, 15 maybe articles have a lot of etymology in them. So I've done all audios on them, I just can't remember where specific things are. And I deal with, I think it's character and our characters on disposition and the port, and how the port, and the womb, and the law of the sea. So anyways, I'm just tying that in here. Mer, the sea, the womb, birth, universe, memory, awareness, conscience, consciousness, mind, mindful. You're recording things in reality. You're recalling things from reality. So first you need to be aware of the things in reality in order to form knowledge, and then store it as memory in the quote mind and quote consciousness. So then you can remember it. So here's the article breakdown on those 6 words that I just did the etymology on. Learning is acquired through tracking reality, following it, which requires immediate responsiveness in real time, nowness. That is why animals have eyes, ears, and are mobile. Animals can interact with reality because they can track reality and themselves in it and move position. So this is where consciousness is in terms of so etymology is always, everything's related in terms of us. Okay? So consciousness, of course, is going to be more related to us, and it has to do with learning morality, which we are capable of doing. Now, animals do not have a conception of morality, and they are limited in the knowledge they can gain, but they still have knowledge. They still have memory. They can learn. They can track things. Everything else in the universe doesn't do that. Anything below the animal physiological construct in reality of the arrangement and coordination of components, well, plants can't do that, rocks can't do that, minerals can't do that. Everything below, everything microscopic, it doesn't do that. It has programmed aspects that do things, and There's a stimulus and a response, and they have their way of, quote, behavior, but it's not human behavior, it's not animal behavior. Again, we're referencing things in terms of ourselves, so whenever there's something that occurs, we can call it behavior because it's an action, but it's not in terms of consciousness. It's not a consciousness action because they're not animal beings with consciousness. So tracks are footprints, marks, left by anything in reality. More specifically, in the literal sense, only animals do that. So you can't track a plant in this sense of a movement mark because plants don't leave tracks. They are not mobile. Plants aren't part of the world of interactivity whereby tracking of marks left behind can be applied to find them. You trace the tracks and find the source it leads to. Furrow is a trench, i.e. a track, like a train track that leads water away. I'm not saying a train track leads water away, but a trench, like a train track leads a train away. Well, a trench is like a train track, but it leads water away. That's what a trench does. So to track something leads somewhere. A trench usually leads somewhere. Usually it'll lead back to a pond or another watering hole for the water to collect and continue downward in gravity and whatever through the strata of the earth or into another larger body of water, a lake or an ocean, whatever. Tracking reality leads us to understand and navigate it better. Animals do this. We humans can do it much better, but right now we are doing it poorly because we're not tracking reality in order to understand and navigate it better. We're being led down false paths because we're not tracking things ourselves. We're being led down tracks. We're being led down paths. So you see a track is a path. It's a way, right? Again, relating to the way and the path. So we're being led down false paths, false ways, false tracks. We're not doing the work ourselves. We're doing it poorly. Plants do not track reality, nor do they leave tracks in reality to follow. Apart from the standard tracks, everything that exists leaves for us to follow to a substantive source meaning, but rocks and anything inanimate have this as well. And a recent etymological breakdown I did, again, I'm trying to prove how words relate to reality and how they define reality correctly, and how animals are not plants, because people have a hard time understanding this. So a recent article I did was on living, action, emotion, choice, and that'll again show how the words reflect reality accurately and how plants are not animals. Not by any stretch of the imagination. So plants do not track reality. They don't leave tracks except for the leaves that fall in place, but they don't leave tracks because they don't move and make a track. They're just a track like anything else in reality that exists. It just fell to the ground, so it leaves a trace. So maybe the wind blows it away, but the plant isn't the one moving. The animals move and leave tracks. Plants don't do that. That's the point. So plants do not track reality, nor do they leave tracks in reality to follow. Apart from the standard tracks, everything that exists leaves for us to follow a substantive source meaning, to a substantive source meaning, but rocks and anything inanimate have this as well. So you can look at anything in reality as a track of that thing existing, and then you can look into it and understand it more. So there's, I've already mentioned that. Two different types of tracks. There's the literal and then the metaphorical. Tracks are made with movement, dragging something along to leave a trace. It draws into the surface, leaving a mark. It also draws you towards something when you track the moving thing, or anything in reality you try to understand. Tracking is drawing and pulling something near to you to grasp it in your hands, either physically or perceptively, and further grasp it in your mind. So you can see how the word track and mark and draw, well, you're drawing something, but you're also drawing it towards you. It's being drawn on the ground, drawn in reality, and then you're drawing it towards you and understanding. You're drawing it into your mind. You're bringing it towards the vision of your mind from the vision of your eyes that you're tracking with. Memory is storing what we track and trace in reality to learn about and form as knowledge. Without knowledge of the past, there is no progression, which is why the memory, the capacity to recall the past and learn from our mistakes, is very important. It requires knowledge. Animals can do that as well, and in a lesser non-human animals can do that as well compared to human animals, but all animals have this capacity in varying degrees. All animals have consciousness in varying degrees. All animals have free will in varying degrees. Knowledge and learning are handed down through time, through the reproduction of life that is able to pass on the past into the future and grow from that knowledge of what has already come before. Memory is the first phase to storing knowledge. After memory comes communication in a verbal form. Then communication in written form. Communication allows memory to transcend the limitation of being restricted to a unit of consciousness for a particular duration of time without extension of that knowledge in a written form. That's why we communicate. Rather than having all knowledge stored in one body vehicle, me, or we can communicate and I can share it with other people. Or else you have to reinvent the wheel every time. Everyone that would be born would have to learn everything from scratch every time. So you have memory in order to facilitate the process of knowledge by communication of knowledge through the memory of the knowledge you've already acquired. The written form is far more effective than the oral form for the succession of knowledge. Because if we only had oral communication, then knowledge would not progress as far. But with written communication, it can be stored down for future generations, and it can be reviewed in a one-to-many relationship across time. The oral form is harder to build upon and share widely. The only place to hold the knowledge is in consciousness when you're doing it in an oral form. Extending knowledge from the inner realm to the outer realm in codified symbol allows others to obtain the information beyond our single death. So we die, and then someone else can take up the knowledge quest and build upon the knowledge. It's not limited to one person, and we got to reinvent things. And it's much more effective to write down knowledge and share it that way. Non-human animals have recall and recollection of knowledge, but it is of their simple lives mostly. Squirrels, for example, will be able to recall the location of where their nuts are stored. So we have Visionary Quest to Wisdom. The next section. History is a learning or knowing through inquiry, question, again quest, chun, right? Quest, question. Well, that's how you begin a quest, begin the journey, which most people are not doing because they don't inquire and they don't question. And if you look at is it nocer? Gnosis, investigation, knowledge, inquiry. Well, what's an investigation? What's an inquiry? Well, that's asking questions, isn't it? So a quest has to do with questioning. You have to question reality, you have to track reality and trace it down in order to understand it. People are not doing this. That's why people are dumb. So question, ask or seek, and into. Seek into, ask into. Into what? Into reality. The things that are there, the things that have traces, the things that exist in ostensible objective reality because they have a trace in reality. Ideas and concepts that we imagine and invent, well, we're imagining and inventing them based on things in reality, but they don't necessarily exist in reality. From seeking into things, we become wise, a form of accurate judgment. For how can anyone judge if they do not seek into, look into things? To seek is track down, inquire, pursue, look for. History is to seek to know something about reality and then see it as it is with clear vision. as accurate perception and conception can be formed. If we think of memory and time, history, history is the larger memory of the collective, not simply the individual memory. So that's the point of history. It's not about learning about the literal past and, oh, there were literal aliens and they literally gave us slavery and they literally taught us all the evil we know. Well, no, I see it more as a purpose in memory storage, as a real story or not, in order to teach us about mistakes and not to repeat them. Whether it happened or not is not important, and I've talked about this many times before in other audio. The point of story narratives from the past, whether true or not, is in order to learn about morality, which is the purpose of conscience and consciousness. So we have history, historia, or learning or knowing by inquiry. Inquiry, question, investigation. So, inquires, history, record, narrative. Again, history, a narrative. It doesn't have to be real. It's just a recording of a story in order to demonstrate an aspect of knowledge. And then historian is inquire from histor, which is a wise man or judge. Because in order to come to know things, we have to judge, discern, evaluate, assess, diagnose, discriminate, differentiate. I've talked about this in a lot of my other work. And that's how you come to know things. And from the Proto-Indo-European root, wid, tor, which from the root wide, or weed, I don't know. It's a W-E-I-D, to know, literally to see. And you'll see how that root W-E-I-D is the root for wisdom. If I'm not putting my foot in my mouth, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So it's to know, literally to see. Wisdom is to see, I think. I think that's below here. Just gonna check. Yeah, okay. So I'm not wrong. Good. And we have a related Greek eidon, which is to see. And then eidone, which is to know. So we have inquire, which is from the Latin in, into, and quarer, and ask, seek, a query. So inquire is in quarer, which is ask into, seek into, a query. It's the base for question, which is a quest. So knowledge quest, a knowledge journey, spiritual journey, the real, quote, spiritual journey has everything to do about knowledge to attain the wisdom of right action. I've been talking about this for a long time. I have no concern for anything spiritual apart from achieving morality, which is the real purpose of everything spiritual. In all real allegories and narratives, metaphors and analogies with reality in the past is all about morality. Because the spirit of good and the spirit of evil, those are the two spirits. That's the duality that we need to know the knowledge of good and evil in order to follow the one way. Because if you don't know evil, then you're going to be walking in evil without even knowing you're doing evil. Especially in our world, we've been conditioned to think that evil is good and wrong is right and falsity is truth. So you need to query, you need to ask questions. The quest. You need to ask questions to begin the quest. Ask questions about reality. Doubt things, be curious and question. This is, I put in a lot of my work in the Care for Truth infographic. You have to doubt, be curious, and question. So we get to seek, because we're seeking into, asking into. So seek is from seeken, inquire, search, pursue. Desire, look, from Proto-Indo-European sagio, from sag, to track down, seek out. So again, seeking, we get back to track. You're tracking reality, you're using your vision to track down and seeking out. And seeking out, well, that's inquire, investigate, question. You see how beautifully all the words link together? in order to import the importance of knowledge in consciousness and in understanding reality. From the Latin, a cognate of the root sag and seek. Well, look at this. Latin sagir. Sagir. Now, if you know French, you know the word sagesse means wisdom. And we've already been talking about that already. In history, it comes from wide, to know, and that's the root for wisdom. And we have seek, the root sag, and that's sagacity, sagesse, it's wisdom. So we have the Latin sagir, to perceive quickly or keenly. And sagus, presaging, predicting. So that's where you had the sage who was able to predict. You know how you're able to predict things in the future? Because you're able to track things in the reality right now, and you can see where things are going. So that's why a lot of us who are into the knowledge quest and the real spiritual journey to attain greater aspects of understanding truth and morality, we can see where things are going. Sagus, predicting. We can see into the future. Not literally, but we can see based on past tendencies. You see memory and knowledge, learning the knowledge of the past. You can see the past tendencies, and you can see how history repeats. Not that literal history repeats, but the same things keep happening over and over because people do not want to learn about the knowledge of good and evil, about the stories put forth. Whether real or not is not important. As far as I'm concerned, none of them are real. They're all allegorical and metaphorical stories that may take aspects of reality that they relate to, but it's all about teaching us about morality, about good and evil. That's what all of the ancient knowledge, all of the ancient narratives and stories teach us about. Open your eyes, people. Open your eyes. From the Proto-Indo-European root seg, to seek out. And then we have see. We have seek. Now we're going to go to see. See on. To see, look, behold, observe, perceive, understand, experience. And then experience, you want to learn more about that. Well, living experience, choice, emotion, action. One of the recent articles I wrote, I think in January. So inspect. Again, we're coming back to see and inspect from inquire and history. It's all related. It's amazing how related everything is. To understand the importance of knowledge and looking to track down reality so that we can draw things from reality into the vision of our mind to see things, gain more understanding, to draw out knowledge. That's how we evolve consciousness. So Proto-Indo-European root, sek with a W, sekwa, I don't know how to say it. And that's to see, which is probably identical with another sekwa, because there's a sekwa with a 2 and a sekwa with a 1, because there's two Proto-Indo-European roots. So one is to see, and the other one is to follow. Again, trace and track. As I've outlined above, trace, right in there, right in trace, a follow, a course. So, you see how all the words relate? Isn't it amazing? So to see and follow, track and trace. And again, Proto-Indo-European root, sekwa, to see and notice. To see and to know is to divide. Without division, all is one, and you see nothing and know nothing. This is where the dualistic conceptual framework can help to bring clarity to our vision of reality. And again, I put a link to the dualistic conceptual framework presentation I did back when I started my site. Divided can mean not joined, separate, and can be more negative as opposite and conflicting. So of course, there's always a dual aspect to many, many words, and a positive and a negative light. To see the bigger picture clearly, You need to look at the parts more clearly, the parts in reality, to track them down, to see them, follow them. The oneness is more understood through the diverse manifestations of existence. So the oneness of everything, and how we can get back to a true unity based in the oneness of truth and morality. That's the purpose of it. True unity will never happen until we all align in truth and morality at the core foundational baseline of morality. And that's why the quote veganism, it's just a word, but ahimsa, doing no harm, that's the base level. And you don't have a right to harm animals. As I'm explaining in all my work on etymology, our kind, our kin, our genus, and what we care about, well, animals are a part of that. People don't recognize it because they have undeveloped quote, heart centers, care, conscience, empathy, and morality, and compassion. They're not bearing the evil that they're doing. They're ignoring the evil being done. We see, perceive, conceive, and know the universals through the particulars. That's why we have to look at the parts more closely to draw. With our inner vision, we can pierce through and draw things from, draw knowledge towards us that isn't even in the direct objects. So we can see that's what metaphysics is, to see behind. Not above and beyond and all this pseudo-spiritual shit. It's just behind what we can see and what we can derive by connecting it back down to reality over and over. Vision, from the Proto-Indo-European root, wide again, W-E-I-D. And we saw that above with history. So how do you get history? You need vision. What's the purpose of history? To have the vision of knowledge, of morality, of truth. To see, metaphorically, to know. So vision, to see, and metaphorically, to know. And the cognates in Sanskrit are vida, which is I know. And then in Greek you have oida, and the Doric voida, and that's I know. And you have eiden, to see, which I mentioned just above in history, related to eiden, to see, and eidene, to know. And then we have divide from dis, which is apart, and videre, to separate. So it's to separate apart. From the Proto-Indo-European root wide again, to separate. This is wide with or weed with an H instead of W-E-I-D hyphen, well, asterisk W-E-I-D hyphen, it's W-I-D-H, so you have an H. So look at that, videre. Videre apart, right? Videre dis. Disvidere, divide. Disvidere is to separate apart. But again, videre comes from the same word as vision and seeing and knowledge, but with an H. Because wide is to see and know, metaphorically, because you'll see in wisdom, that's the root as well. Wide, or weed, whatever the word is. And that's also for separate. So the only way you can come to know things, as I said in the intro for this section, is through separation and division, which is also at the root of psi and see and knowledge, and logos and leg, to collect. I've talked about this in other etymological breakdowns as well. And science, seer, see, know, has the same meaning from Proto-Indo-European root skei, to cut and split. It's a dividing again. And we have perception, to perceive, notice, see, recognize, understand, from per, thoroughly, and caper. Per caper, perception, to grasp and take is what caper means, to grasp and take. So you can see my previous posts on hold that I've done in family ownership and slavery, and have and behave, which is in characters in our character, relating to morality, because that's what everything's all about. It's all about morality, it's all about knowledge. Knowledge is all about morality. Consciousness is about morality. It's all about living right. That's the purpose of consciousness. That's the purpose of evolution. That's why we evolve consciousness. And that's why the only way to evolve consciousness is through an understanding of truth and morality, and you have to start with reality to understand truth and morality. So conception as well. Perception, conception, inception. You have conception, which is to take the seed into the womb, become pregnant, right? To take in and hold. From com and caper. To take together, to take with. And then that's from Proto-Indo-European root cap, to grasp. So again, the same thing. Per, capper, com, capper, and inception is in capper. So inception is beginning, starting, a beginning undertaking. Begin, take in hand, from in, which is in on, and capper, to take or seize, capable. So if you look at other work I've done, family ownership and slavery, maybe other ones I forget, but capable, again, take, hold in, grasp, hold, it's all related. So yeah, that's what we do. We take in, we draw in, and we hold in the knowledge, and we have perception, conception, and inception. And I'll do a little breakdown paragraph text on all that after this. And we get to sage, as I mentioned before, on seeing and seek. We had sag, sagir, sagus, and I mentioned the French sagesse. All relates to wisdom. So we have sage, wise, knowledgeable, learned, shrewd, skillful. Gallo-Roman sapius, vulgar Latin sapius, saper. So we get to have a taste, have a good taste, be wise. And that's from the Proto-Indo-European sap, to taste. So we have the sap of the tree. Taste, have a good taste, to be wise, to taste. I'm not sure I did taste in here. I think I did taste in, I broke down taste in living experience, action, choice, and emotion. I think I did it in there. So you can see all my work relates. Why? Because all words relate back down to reality in the common aspect of knowing about reality, and the importance of knowing about reality and knowledge and evolving consciousness towards greater truth and morality and right action, the wisdom of right action to live better. It's all related. Etymology is amazing once you get down into it and how everything connects. I'm talking about pure word etymology, not loose creative etymology and trying to connect things that are very tenuous. I try to stay away from that because I find it less concrete, less grounded in reality, in what can be verified more explicitly. So we have sap, a liquid in a plant, from the Proto-Indo-European root sab, a juice or fluid. And we have the cognates in Sanskrit, sabar, sap, milk, nectar, and saper, to taste. And Russian, soku, sap, and sakas in Lithuanian, trigum. And you can relate this to, I think, Bible and other places where they mention milk and nectar. It's not about literal milk and nectar. You can think of it in a way of knowledge, because you can see how sap and sage, wisdom, relates to knowledge. So you can reinterpret stories in an actual proper symbolic method relating to how words are and symbols are grounded in reality. You have sapient, wise, saper, to taste, have a taste, be wise, because that's what we're doing. We're having a taste of reality each time. We're drawing things, we're tracking things, we're drawing them towards us, and we're seeing them with the vision of the eyes. You could say, well, we're tasting it. It's a taste of reality. And that's from the Proto-Indo-European root sep, to taste and perceive. So that's why there's perception and conception and inception, again, where we're tasting. The more we perceive and conceive about reality correctly, not phantasmagorically and imaginal and whatever we want to believe, but actually grounded in reality, well, the more we're going to be able to be wise and have right action and do things right. And sapio is discern, to be capable of discerning. So again, sapient, what's that? Oh, well, homo sapien, sapien. That's because we're allegedly the wise man, right? Allegedly. We have the capacity, but we don't really live it yet. So we have wise, learned, sagacious, cunning, sane, prudent, discreet, experienced, having the power of discerning and judging rightly. And from the Proto-Indo-European root of weed, whatever it is, wide, W-E-I-D again, to see, hence to know, which is a vision, a sense evolution from to see, to way of proceeding. So you see how it goes from Wise is actually wisdom of right action, which I have an article which I did back in 2013 or early 2014, and it's to see the way of proceeding. See, it's a sense evolution from to seeing, because in order to see reality, well, then you can see where you're going. So that's the whole purpose of tracking reality, drawing knowledge in, gaining wisdom, seeing things, the vision, all that. It all has to do with the way of proceeding, which is why wisdom is directly rooted in action. You don't have wisdom if you're not acting. You just have understanding. There's knowledge and understanding, and then when you bring that knowledge and understanding into a way of proceeding, then you have wisdom. That's the real form of wisdom, the active. So people can say, oh, you're wise because you speak things that are wise. But do you live it? Or do you just talk the talk? So there's two levels of wisdom. Just understanding, and then you're quote wise, or you're actually wise because it's a way of proceeding, the way and the path. You're living it right. And then we have the Greek eidos, which is a form, shape, and kind, also a course of action. And we've talked about, I mentioned eidos above when I did history related to eidon and eidene, to know. So wisdom is right action, and I have a link to that article I just mentioned. The way and path. Again, a track is a way. And I just mentioned that earlier. Anyways, I'm not going to go back and find where it was, but I mentioned it before about the tracing and the path and the track and all that. It's all related. Wise has also been used to apply in the sense of way, fashion, custom, habit, manner, condition, state, circumstance. And there I link to the previous article and audio on characters and our character, because that's the way, fashion, custom, habit, and manner. That's what wisdom is about. The wisdom of right action in the way and path. As in likewise and clockwise. So a way and fashion. So you can see how they relate in the words. Likewise, clockwise. Why did I put that there? Wait a second. Oh yeah, likewise, because it's a fashion, a custom or habit or manner. And, well, clockwise is a direction, so it's a way and a path. So you can see how words relate always to, they always go back to each other in some form. Because they're all supposed to relate to reality and what actually is, because that's what reality is. Reality level 1 is related to truth level 1, which is just what is in reality, good and bad. And reality level 2 is our subjective reality, where we can perceive things incorrectly. So that's the danger of when we perceive and conceive of things, we can imagine things that aren't there. That's why we always have to go back to reality and trace things back to reality to make sure our inductions are accurately formed. We deduce back down to reality to verify them. So eidos is a form, a likeness. It is the image, that which we are reflecting through our actions. So as I showed in cognates for wise, we have in the Greek eidos, form, shape, or kind. Well, what is the form, shape, or kind that we are becoming? Well, it's related to our actions. The form we take, the shape we take in our actions, the kind of person we become, is related to our actions. What way, what path are we walking in? So eidos, form, likeness is the image, that which we are reflecting through our actions. The image of good or evil. Are we reflecting the image of good, or are we reflecting the image of evil? We can become our true self in right action and reflect that image into reality from our subjective parallel multiverse reality, which is what the inner domain of consciousness is. It's a subjective multiverse parallel processing alongside reality, where we're trying to align our internal dimensions of subjective reality and our perceptions and conceptions with actual reality. When people just conceive of things willy-nilly and just believe whatever they want, that's the problem we have. That's the dark path. So we have to reflect the image of reflect that image into reality from our subjective parallel multiverse reality. We have to align our perceptions with reality. align ourselves with truth. And that will produce the wisdom of right action. We see and know it first in our consciousness internally, and then manifest it externally in speech or action. So more on wisdom, right action, i.e. morality. We have eidos, which is a form. To know something is to know its substantial form, its essence, its definition. And we have eidos, form, idea, species, form, likeness, appearance, resemblance, a view. And we have idea, so eidos, a form, an idea, which is why the idea is looked at as the form, and the ideal is the form. I think that's from Plato's conceptions. And so you have eidos, the source for idea, a vision in the mind, images in the mind, consciousness, etc. It's all related. Ideas, form, kind, shape, wisdom, wise, sapient, sage, inception, conception, perception, divide, vision, see, seek, inquire, history, memory, drag, track, trace, track, learn. It's all related. All related. How do you think I get to do these etymological projects? I go from word to word to word, and I develop an etymological story about reality. And I think this is beautiful, all this work. Every time I do one, I'm like, wow, I learn more and more about reality because I see the interlinking correspondences between the symbols that actually represent and reflect reality. People don't understand the power of language. They don't understand how to define words properly. People just define things according to how they've been inculcated and inducted with definitions, and they're not looking at words more deeply in order to understand reality more deeply. So we have eido, to be aware, behold, consider, perceive. Eidome, to see, from the Proto-Indo-European root wade again, W-E-Y-D this time instead of an I. But it's the same thing. It's the same word. Weed, wade, whatever. It's a Y instead of an I. And that's cognates with Latin video. And so again, video, what we see, right? The videos. And that's eidome, to see. And then we have eidos, idea, a form, an idea. And that's likeness, appearance, resemblance. The form, shape, or kind. Because the kind is a similar appearance, a similar resemblance, a similar likeness. All animals have a similar likeness. And the species has the most similar likeness within the genus of animal. So if you want to learn more about that, look into kind, kin, genus, and care. Previous etymological breakdown I did. And we have oida, which is to know. So instead of ido and with an E-I-D-O, now we have O-I-D-A, to know. So to see and to know, again, related. They're all related. It's beautiful. And that's Proto-Indo-European root void instead of wade. Well, instead of an E, well, we have an O. So W-E-Y-D into W-O-Y-D. So eidome and eido, well, oida. So we replaced in Proto-Indo-European W-E-Y-D to W-O-Y-D, and in the Greek it's from an E to an O. So they all relate. And we had above Vida. Where was that? Was related to know. Yeah, so vision, and Sanskrit is Vida, I know. And we have here Vida, right, to know. And you have Video, which is to see. And then you have Oida, to know, which again in Sanskrit is Vida, which is to know. So you can see how all the words relate even from language to language, because they're all based in reality. And originally, I suspect there's a common source, symbolic, foundational metaphor, analogy, allegory, parabolic creation to language and words through an original symbolic source. At some point, maybe in a past civilization. Either way, people communicated and developed words and then diverged and things changed, but you always have similar roots in etymology because the words do reflect reality, and the sounds, maybe they're inherent. in our ways of expressing symbols through nature. Anyways, I don't know. I haven't delved far enough into language yet. But language is fascinating. Etymology is fascinating, and it helps us learn more about our reality. And we also have, we have idome and oida, to see and to know, respectively. But we have the ending words, oid, like Polaroid or demonoid or I don't know other oid words. I can't think of them right now, but there's words that end in oid. And there's words that begin in oid, like oida. So, paranoid. I don't know, I can't think of any, but I know I put this here for a reason. So, oid, i.e. oida, so a suffix meaning resembling, like. Word forming element meaning like that. Thing like a. So why? Well, because it comes from oida. And that comes from idome. And we have eidos, the form, idea, likeness, appearance, resemblance, etc. And we have cis, the word, the end of a word of cis, like no cis, right? So that's a suffix, and it's an action, process, state, or condition, denoting action, process, state, condition from the Greek sis, which is identical in meaning with Latin entia and English ing. So when you have words that end in ing, or you have a Latin, intelligentsia, entia, in English ing, and in Greek cis, well, that all denotes a process, state, or condition, an action. So the gnosis, it's an action, a process, a condition of coming to know the world, know, and then cis. And we have the hyphen ness, so consciousness. We have conscious and conscience, which is with knowledge or to know together. And then ness is an action, quality, or state. So consciousness is with knowledge as a state of being, with knowledge as a quality, with knowledge as an action. So consciousness has to do with knowledge. Is the active state, the quality of having knowledge, of acquiring knowledge. That's the purpose of higher order consciousness. And lower order consciousness, animals that aren't as higher order consciousness as human animals, well, they have a limited capacity to know things. They don't have higher order capacities of conscious awareness of reality and abstraction. It's really the abstraction. Because human consciousness, the higher order consciousness of human animals, is an abstraction engine. We can pierce through the veil of reality and look into what's behind it. That's what's less visible to the ostensible eyes, what's right in front of us in physicality. It's metaphysics. There are two aspects to conscience as it relates to consciousness, more specifically to morality. And I've mentioned this in axioms, existence, consciousness, and identity. The word syneidesis, and then there's also synteresis. So syneidesis, the capacity to apply general principles of moral judgment to particular cases, is distinguished from synderesis. So syneidesis, apply general principles of moral judgment to a particular cases. This is the study of morality, how to apply it in life. This is what brings you to wisdom. It's an actual word. And it's still a discipline studied in part by some academics, I think. So it's from Greek syneidesis, literally consciousness, awareness, from syneidene, to have knowledge of something, be aware of. So why will we have sin together? And then eidene, well, what is eidene? I've already been talking about that. To see, weighed, video, appearance, resemblance, form, idea, and it relates to vision and mind and wisdom and knowledge. So we have syneidesis, is conscience as passing judgment on past acts, as opposed to synteresis. So from sin, with, together, and eidene, to know. So again, syneidesis is with knowledge or to know together, and that's based on a conscience as past judgment on past acts. Because to have a conscience, you have to have a memory of the past in order to have a knowledge of what occurred as good and evil, to have an understanding of the knowledge of good and evil. Because if you're just born into the world, you don't have an understanding of knowledge and evil. You have to interact with the world and develop an understanding. So, conscience as passing judgments on past acts. You understand what happened in the past because you have a conscience, the knowledge of good and evil. Synteresis is conscience as a guide to future actions. So you have syneidesis, which has to do with the past actions that you can judge on through your conscience, and synteresis through the knowledge of the past, right? Memory, the importance of memory, what I'm talking about in memory and knowledge, and not to repeat the same mistakes. It doesn't matter if they actually happened or not. You can learn from fiction and from non-fiction. So synteresis is about the future action. Conscience as a guide to future actions, which is always based on the past actions and not repeating the same mistakes. And that's from sin with and terrain, to watch over. So to watch over with, to watch over together. And that's how we're supposed to go into the future together, is conscience as a guide to future actions. So we all need to understand morality, we all need to understand good and evil, and then we can truly unite. Note, conscience for morality in the past is knowledge, eidene, while conscience about the future actions is more about watching over what will come. So what's going to happen? There's not only our own actions, there's other actions of other people. So what will come, where we have to look at the past, syneidesis and judgment of the past, in order to have synteresis as a guide for the future. The knowledge comes from the past, and it'll help us guide us into the future. That's the purpose of conscience, that's the purpose of knowledge, that's the purpose of consciousness. All related. As I've mentioned in this one and in the previous breakdown on axioms, existence, consciousness, and identity, consciousness and consciousness, conscious and conscience, for moral living, knowledge of morality, they're the same thing. That's what consciousness is about. It's about bringing us to moral living, which is higher order consciousness. If you want to learn more about that, check out my infographic and presentation on truth, natural law, heaven and hell, Bible symbolism, and you'll understand, as I mentioned at the beginning, the earth element, which is male, and low base, carnal, fleshly, beastly consciousness, and we need to rise to the air element and ma'at and heaven, rather than live in the hell of our beastly consciousness and just pleasures and focusing on pleasures and just ignoring the evil and creating evil in order to get pleasures. And as long as we have our comfort and our pleasure, well, whatever. We need to evolve beyond our low base consciousness on the checkerboard floor and climb the ladder, rebirth, reborn, ascend, and resurrect ourselves over and over, and be reborn in the fires of purification to purify ourselves from that low base consciousness into higher consciousness. All stories of the past, it's all symbolism, it's all allegory, it's all analogy, parables, in order to get us towards morality of higher order consciousness. This is the purpose of being a human. I mentioned it elsewhere. I know why I am here, and it's to end evil and slavery wholesale on the whole planet. Not just human animals, all animals. And that's the moral baseline, the foundation every single human needs to get to. Then we can have true unity and go forward. Until that happens, forget it. And I'm willing to endure. I'm willing to have more bearing of the evil until we get things right. Because I'm sick of the thousands and thousands of years of going around in circles because people don't want to sacrifice themselves and their satanic attachment to themselves and my survival, my freedom, my truth, my pleasure. It's all me, me, me. And that's what the human sphere only is. It's all about you and how you need to end the slavery for humans, because the humans are the only ones that can help you end slavery overall. The animals can't help you. If you unenslave the animals, well, they're not going to help you unenslave you. They don't have that capacity, right? So you don't care about them. You only want to focus on ending human slavery because it's only us humans that enslave ourselves. It's not the animals that are part of that self-enslavement. It's only humans. So that's why some people only want to focus on the human enslavement, because it's all about their little circle of humanity and how it relates to their survival and their freedom. Because fighting for the animals and their freedom, well, it's still gonna, you're looking at it as a way, well, the other people aren't, they're not going to help me. It's only other people in our collective co-creation, aggregate co-creation of how we self-inflict suffering and self-impose enslavement on ourselves. Well, that's the only thing you're looking at is, well, we're doing that to ourselves, so we got to focus on the human sphere so we can end slavery for ourselves. Well, I'm saying we need to go deeper to the real moral baseline and focus on all evil, all slavery, and tackle it from the root, and that will cascade in the ripple effect of cause and effect automatically into other spheres and evolving consciousness once we get to that base. So I'm fighting for that, and I'm willing to bear more. And centuries, well, I won't be here or whatever, but I'll still bear it in my lifetime, and everyone after will bear it, and we're all one in that sense conceptually. So I'm willing to do that, because that's what it takes, is sacrifice and service to truth and morality from the baseline, not from wherever is convenient for you, because it deals with only your enslavement and your freedom and your truth. You're looking on quick gains. Oh, well, I want my humanity. I want to be free, so I need to free humans so that I can be free, so that other humans don't enslave me. The other animals, whatever. You go, oh, I'm vegan, but whatever. I'm not going to talk about it because it's divisive. And, people aren't ready. Well, they're not going to be ready unless you talk about the moral baseline, and we focus on the moral baseline and pure morality and the pure foundation, the root causal factor, the real root causal factor, and then it'll cascade from there. Why go from a secondary layer of only humans and then prolong the suffering of others, the natural law level 1 violation of others we have no right to inflict harm upon, because we're focusing on level 2 of the self-inflicted harm we do upon ourselves as a human sphere. No, we need to go to the root of the all-animal sphere. I have an infographic on that, which will be part of my big natural law correction of really based in reality and objective reality and detachment from myself, from humans, and looking at pure alignment with truth and morality. That's what I'm attached to. So we got to stop looking at it from a personal, satanic aspect of my survival and my freedom. So we're only going to target the human sphere and to go deeper, much deeper. So he who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. How many people have read 1984 by George Orwell? When I read that book, that quote is my favorite quote from that book. It always stuck with me. So, syneidesis, knowledge of the past and morality of the past through conscience, and synteresis, well, the knowledge of the past is conscience as a guide to the future action. So when you have people controlling the past, the knowledge of the past, well, you're going to control the future. And if you control the present, then you're going to control the past. So the people who control the present control the information about the past and our knowledge about the past and learning about the mistakes of the past. So then, therefore, they control the future direction we're heading in. We're not learning the right way, that we're not learning the right path to walk on, so we keep walking on the wrong path into the future. And that's how they control us. Now, not literal knowledge of the past. You can't prove that, as I've mentioned in other audios. You can't prove it. But that's not the main importance. It's the story, the narrative. That's what's the moral tale. It can be real, it can be fictional, it can be non-fictional. Is not the most important thing. The important thing is the story about morality and truth that you can derive from it. Look at the tale of Jesus, and the Egyptian symbolism isn't literal gods and all this literal crap. The Sumerian thing I say as well is not literal stuff. It's to learn about how we're manipulated through authority into, you're from God, the conception of God, so then, you're the authority, which is the same thing in Bible. Follow the will of God. even though it's a corrupt, anthropomorphized retard God, or you got to follow that dictate. No, it's about learning how to not follow authority blindly and think for yourself as an actual consciousness, human being in higher order consciousness in conscience, because you know morality. Don't follow the authority of gods or God itself as portrayed in these symbolic narratives of the Bible. We usually only think conscience has to do with morality. And here I link to the Axioms, Existence, Consciousness, and Identity article to show that as well. Previously I showed how conscience and conscious are the same. So I link to it again to show how, we have usually we think conscience is only to do with morality as in etymology, but when you look at the other words in etymology, you can see how conscious and consciousness, same thing, has to do with morality, as I've been showing. Here we see that consciousness isn't simply to know, it is the context of how we view conscience, morality. Higher order consciousness is about making moral judgments. In the etymology for conscience, it is stated the word is probably a loan translation of Greek syneidesis, literally with knowledge. With knowledge of what? Well, the knowledge, conscience as passing judgment on past actions. You want to judge, you want to past actions? Well, conscience, morality, the past actions, it's what it's all about. That's what consciousness is about. So that's why when you want to conceptually either anthropomorphize, project, or personify, you think of God and the source, the prime cause, mover, and that's the quote all and quote one and quote pure, quote consciousness, quote awareness. Well, that's what it is. It's literally, that's why that being, capital B, is a transcendental being, which is truth, love, good, right, morality, as I've conceptually arrived at this understanding. I can't prove it, but conceptually it makes sense, and it's a valid, it's a useful framework and model to use in order to guide us into the future. Whether it's real or not, it helps us understand ourselves and reality more. And that's what I call truth level 2, is the aspects of the transcendental being. And that's what brings us to higher evolved consciousness. So it brings us to higher God consciousness, whatever. It doesn't matter how you want to reference it in terms of yourself in order to relate to it, in order to derive meaning in terms of reality and things we need to do. It's metaphor, it's allegory, it's analogy, it's a parable. People get too stuck on literal things. You need to understand symbols, how they reflect reality, and how you can use symbols and other imagery of reality as a symbol in order to reflect other symbols and understandings about reality that are grounded in reality. So there's a literal symbols, and then there's allegorical and metaphorical symbols, and stories and narratives. So this was referring simply to conscience, consciousness, the action, quality, or state of being conscious. But it seems to be inclusively about morality as well, as we see in other descriptions. Wiki even has a page on synteresis, and that's for the future, based on the past. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. So synderesis, in scholastic moral philosophy, is the natural capacity or disposition, habitus, again, behave, habit, have, what you have, of the practical reason, to apprehend intuitively the universal first principles of human action. That's from the wiki page on synteresis. Synteresis, conscience as a guide to future actions based on the past. And it's all about morality. I'll read it again. Synteresis, again, if you've listened to my other audios, I've said how D and T is interchangeable. There's B, P, and K. There's G and K. So you have B, P, G, and K. You have F, V. You have F, P, and V. They're interchangeable. You have B and V. They're interchangeable. You have L and M. You have M and N. You have L and R. There's a lot of consonants that are interchangeable across various languages. It's part of understanding philology. Synderesis in scholastic moral philosophy is the natural capacity, again capacity, where is that from? Capacity, hold, grasp, or do we see this in this article? Conception, perception, inception, capacity, synderesis, conscience in scholastic moral philosophy is the natural capacity or disposition, habitus, of the practical reason. Again, I've gone into reason before. Go look into it. I've done etymology on reason, rational, ratio, how it ties to logic. All that's in previous work. So, is the natural capacity or disposition of practical reason to apprehend intuitively the universal first principles of human action. So, it is universal first principles of human action. That's what natural moral law is. It's universal for humans. It's universal for higher order consciousness. And it's not like gravity where you know, if you do some jump off a cliff, well, you're going to die. Eventually, it's about killing ourselves. It's not a force that's going to do it to you. Anyways, this will all be explained. I've mentioned it briefly in several audios in the past, and it'll be part of my natural law corrective presentation. I guess I should call it that. It's going to correct a lot of misunderstandings about natural moral law and how it actually works. And it's going to correct karma and what karma actually is. It has nothing to do with reincarnation. I'll even mention how you can reinterpret carnation into a more grounded understanding. It's more plausible and more probable. Not the standard reincarnation where you come back. No, it's in terms of the oneness. Yeah, well, the oneness keeps regenerating in reality. It keeps creating reality. Conceptually, the oneness, the all, the energy, the singularity that creates everything. Well, everything is consciousness anyway. So when you're reborn, well, yeah, you're reborn. It's consciousness being reborn, right? Conceptually, in this framework, because people take things literally and they don't remember the symbolism, and they get bogged down in literal interpretations, and they don't see how things are symbolically related to us through an anthropomorphized, personified, and projected symbolic allegories and narratives, and everything becomes literal. And then, oh, you're literally coming back from a soul, and you're reincarnating, and all this afterlife crap, and it's all symbolic, and I can represent it in terms of higher order consciousness and coming out of the grave and the tomb of being dead, not really alive, like which is everyone on the planet, and then really being alive because you're actually in truth and morality, and you care for truth and morality, rather than just pretend and be comfortable in your life and pretend and lie to yourself that you're good and moral. So that's the end of the article. And I have some related articles at the bottom that I've mentioned, kin, kind, genus, care, axioms, existence, consciousness, and identity, and characters and our characters. So you can take a look at that. Anyways, I recommend take a look at all my work, because all my work is very important on the foundations of understanding reality. And unfortunately, not many people are going through my work, so oh well, maybe in time that'll change. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your attention. Those are the spiritual currencies, the real, quote, spiritual currencies, because they're dealing with bringing us towards the real spirituality, which is morality. Use your time and attention to learn about the real spiritual morality and truth. Not about fanciful notions, fantasy thinking. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. I hope my microphone was okay. I've had to hold this in my cramping hand at a certain direction, but anyways, I guess I'll buy a new one now. Well, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Take care. Peace.